Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we are going to look at the year 2025 on a personal level. We're going to look at this from the context of your rising or sun signs to see how this year is going to play out for you personally. So we're going to go through the major transits for the year to decipher the most important factors for you. So we're going to look at Pluto in Aquarius, which has just permanently moved in November, and look at how that's going to play into the fact that Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn are all changing signs this year. So they're going to be in different houses in your chart than they have been for ages. And then we also will look at Jupiter and its ingress into Cancer to look at where that benefit and luck, goodwill is coming through for you next year. And we will also look at this big epic Mars retrograde process that we have just started going through and will be playing out for the whole first half of the year. And then we will look at the nodal axis and its sign change into Pisces and Virgo to see how the eclipses are likely to play out for you, with eclipses in Pisces, Virgo, and Aries within the context of your own personal chart. So this should play out. This should work perfectly for your rising sign. It could probably also hold for your sun sign as well, but also for a detailed description of what to expect in the coming year, do feel free to book a personal reading. What I do is I look at your natal chart, I go deeply into all of that, but then I use a lot of different timing techniques to see which eclipses are most likely to play out in a very poignant way for people. Whether or not their zodiacal releasing indicates that certain alignments are likely to play out and manifest in a specific way or not, and all of the transits to your own personal planets and so forth. So to really dig into this, I definitely recommend a personal reading, but this should hold really perfectly for your rising sign, and it will probably also apply for your sun sign as well. Additionally, for a mundane astrology general overview of the coming year, politically, historically, socially, I just published last week a really epically long video about that. So if you have the time and you are interested in how this year is also likely to play out on the world stage, I recommend checking that out too. And other than that, if you are new here, do please consider subscribing for future videos. I do topics like this, so the mundane astrology on the one hand, and then I tend to look at the exact same alignment or time frames from a personal standpoint and take it through all of the signs. So if that's something that is of interest to you, then do please feel free to subscribe. I would love to have you here for future videos. And if you don't mind hitting the thumbs up button, I would greatly appreciate that. It helps the video to spread around. It helps the channel to grow. So I am deeply, deeply grateful for all of that. And without any further ado, let's get into your reading. For Pisces, we have Pluto in the 12th house. We have Saturn and Neptune moving into your second house. And we have Uranus moving into your fourth house. So with Pluto in your 12th house, Pluto represents transformation, regeneration, power dynamics, the power and control that we or others have over matters. And that is playing out in your 12th house. And the 12th house has a lot to do with our subconscious, our kind of psychological patterning, our conditioning, those things that we carry with us psychologically in our subconscious that we're not aware of. This is also the place of isolation. It's very spiritual. It's very sacrificial. There can be a sense of the things that we do that are detrimental to us that can play out in the 12th house. But it's not, in my view, just a negative place. So with Pluto playing out here, I would expect a major transformation of your subconscious. Pluto can actually bring some light to that for you, where you may find that you're able to discover, especially if there are other transits that wind up going on that wind up triggering this off. You could become very consciously aware of some patterning that has developed within you. This can also have you getting really deeply into esoteric matters, as this tends to be what goes on also behind the veil. So this is also our place of natural intuition, the things that we're able to pull out of that realm through our own subconscious. Now, there could also be a fear of isolation or a fear of loneliness that arises with Pluto here, because Pluto can bring up those little subtle fears and things like this. But I would try kind of off the bat to reframe that and look at any isolation that you experience in your life that seems on some level necessary as empowering, as something that you enjoy. So I would really try to learn to enjoy the time that you're able to spend by yourself. If you have Pisces strong, this probably isn't that alien to you of a concept, but there's more emphasis on that right now. So changing your relationship with being alone sometimes and being with yourself and your thoughts and your feelings and your spiritual practice and so on and so forth on your own, and feeling empowered by that. Now, along kind of similar lines, we have Uranus, which represents upheaval, huge changes, sudden changes and shifts, fascination and interest, sometimes on the positive side, even windfalls or weird good luck that seems to come through pretty quickly. But there can also be shocks to the system that arise very quickly with Uranus as well. And that's playing out in your fourth house of family, home, roots, your origin. And so this transformation of your subconscious that is probably at various times revealing that kind of psychological material to you and those patterns to you. It could be revealing matters that are related to your family, your upbringing, your roots. And it could be bringing that to your attention and requiring for you to liberate from certain aspects of that, either to admit some things to yourself and therefore be able to kind of look at them square in the face and work through them as they are, or to change those relationships going forward, to make them healthier going forward, more sustainable, because there's a need here for change, a need for liberation from some kind of psychological patterning that probably goes all the way back. Now, there could also be some shocks that come to your family. They're like major changes, events, things that are really new. So there could even be a new baby that is a surprise within the family as well. Not necessarily just to you, but even to a family member, as well as to your home or living situation. So there could be a need to move. That is one of the pretty standard delineations of Uranus transiting your fourth house, is that it very often signifies a big move. But there's also more of a proclivity for things to break in the house. So that is something I would try and keep in mind and maybe not overlook if something seems to be getting a little heavy with wear and tear, to not ignore that until something breaks maybe. Now, additionally, this Uranus playing out in your fourth house can also have you feeling a little bit destabilized or like the security isn't there. And that is also playing into Saturn and Neptune, which are moving into your second house, where Saturn, these planets are quite different, but Saturn represents a kind of reservedness, a caution, long-term focus, a goal orientation, a willingness to put in effort and to act with integrity. It also it requires a lot of focused intention on the area that it is highlighting. Now, on the other hand, Neptune is very idealistic. It can romanticize situations. It can be very optimistic, even wearing rose-colored glasses. There can also be some confusion, even to the point of delusion or deception that arises with Neptune. But otherwise, it is a very spiritual planet and also brings with it a lot of compassion. Now, it can also bring some fortune and some really big dreams and visions that Saturn is likely to want to figure out. What are the steps to that? How do we make that happen? What kind of effort can we put into that to making that a reality? Now, in terms of their overlap, Saturn and Neptune do both together represent a willingness to make sacrifices for some greater cause. So whether that be a cause that is outside of yourself, that is caring toward others, compassionate toward others, or if it is a big dream of yours where you are very willing to delay gratification in order to pursue some big vision of yours. It also, these two overlap in terms of a sense of wisdom that comes with them, knowledge from experience, and an ability, especially with Saturn here, to then practically apply that knowledge and that depth of knowledge to your life. So with both of these playing out in the second house, the second has to do with your finances, your security, your stability, revenue streams, material resources, your values, your sense of self-value, your self-sufficiency, and self-reliance. So these are contributing to this, but in a way that may not be completely clear with Neptune here. So there's a greater effort and a greater focus on this, and really wanting to establish greater security and stability within your life, a greater self-reliance, and probably a big goal that is bound up with that. But simultaneously with Neptune here, there's also likely a diminution of the significance of materialistic values to you. So you're likely, even though you're willing to put in the effort and you probably have this big vision around this, there may be a sense in which the security and the resources are not the end game, but they are serving some greater purpose. Again, remember, making the personal sacrifices for some greater cause. So maybe that is to liberate yourself from a psychologically demanding situation where you're needing to sweep some things under the rug. That would be just one potential example of how that would wind up playing out. But ultimately, these are really asking you, what purpose and what value do the resources that you have available to you serve you? And to try not to lose vision of that, because again, I don't think that those resources are the end game. I think that there's something bigger here, and I think that it has to do with your relationships and your reliance on others and your own sense of pride and satisfaction within your own life, as well as comfort. These will definitely seek comfort together as well. There could, with Saturn in the second house and Pluto in the 12th house interacting with each other, there could be a tendency toward unnecessary fears around resources. And I would just recommend try not to go too heavy with that, because it's likely that your fears are far outstripping what the potential even is of the kind of reality of the situation. So I wouldn't worry too terribly much about that. I would just, again, try and take a really practical view of that with Saturn there in your second house. So let's look at Mars and Jupiter here and what they are doing this year. So Mars is doing one of its big dramatic retrograde period ordeals here during this year. It only goes retrograde every couple of years, but when it does so in a very epic fashion. Typically, it'll go through a sign approximately every month, but the whole retrograde process takes about 8 months, and it pretty much runs Mars from 6 degrees of Leo and 17 degrees of Cancer. So it goes through the whole shadow, and then it goes back, and then it has to retrace its steps and try and gain some speed. So from January through the end of April, pretty much until May, you're dealing with Mars in Cancer, which is Mars in your fifth house here. And Mars tends to bring complications. It can bring conflict, challenges, a dislike or an irritability toward a given area of your life, as well as just little things that come up that have to be dealt with, a lot more effort that winds up being required by that part of your life, and somehow less satisfaction along those lines. Although there can be greater motivation and greater energy available, especially when it's direct in a given area. So this is playing out first for about the first half of the year in your fifth house. So you could have issues arise with regard to children, especially if you have your own children. Also, your creative efforts and outlets, hobbies, sports, interests, things like this. So you may feel like you're having a little bit less fun, and you may also feel that you're experiencing a creative block around this time. And I wouldn't worry about it too much, just because it's a transit. It'll pass. Yeah, it's super annoying, but it will pass. So another thing that I would recommend, though, is to be really careful if you play sports, because Mars can also bring injuries. And so there's a much greater chance of injuring yourself while playing sports, or if you have a hobby through which you could injure yourself, there's a much, much greater chance of that in the first half of the year as well. And children could be irritable. They could be a little bit more conflictual. If you are in a romantic relationship, you may find that there's some bickering or argumentation going on there as well. So I would try not to let that snowball. But what's nice about this alignment is that once Mars moves on from Cancer, when we get into May, then by the second week of June, we have Jupiter moving into this house. So Jupiter is then moving into Cancer, and it'll be in your fifth house, which is very lovely, for a year. So June 25 to June 26, we're dealing with Jupiter in your fifth house there. So this is coming through and cleaning up a lot of the mess that Mars made plus some. So this really increases the level of enjoyment and fun. You could find yourself certainly going out more, and potentially even a proliferation of your hobbies and creative interests, as well as benefits gained and improvement of those creative efforts and hobbies. So getting better at all of those things, but also then potential benefits from them. So if you are wanting to, if you're creative and you're wanting to sell your work, there could definitely be opportunities along those lines out in your community, or possibly even online as well. If you have children, your relationship with them is likely to improve under this influence as well, and having a greater enjoyment of those relationships. But there could also then be improvements to the lives of your children. So you could see some lucky breaks for them, or some recognition or achievements or awards or something like this that can come in with Jupiter in your fifth as well. Additionally, in terms of a romantic relationship, this would also be really helpful in making that really mutually beneficial, mutually enjoyable, healthy, very supportive, full of goodwill for each other. So yeah, this is a really lovely place to have Jupiter transiting, because it's basically the place where we enjoy things. And Jupiter magnifies enjoyment, and it really encourages enjoyment. And so we're likely to see a lot more of that for you from the summer of 25 through the summer of 26, which is really, really nice. And again, if you had any creative blocks, this Jupiter is likely to come through here and really increase inspiration and allow you to become a lot more prolific within the context of your creative outlets as well. So let's look at also the eclipses that are coming up. So we have the nodal axis has just moved into Pisces and Virgo from Aries and Libra. The nodal axis always moves in retrograde motion. The planets typically run counterclockwise. These run clockwise. And so that's why it's just moved from Aries backward into Pisces here. Now, what the nodal axis represents is the way that the sun goes up into the northern hemisphere and down into the southern hemisphere, if we're going to completely bastardize the reality of the situation from a very geocentric point of view. And the moon does that each month. Of course, the sun does that each year. That's our seasons. The moon does it monthly. And there's 2 points at which in a given year, alignments intersect. And so it's that point at which we would have a perfect alignment of the earth and the moon and the sun. And that's where we get eclipses. And so typically we get 2 each season, a solar and a lunar eclipse, but hence we have Pisces and Virgo here. The eclipses will therefore take place during Pisces season and during Virgo season, typically speaking. Now, because this has just changed signs, we have, instead of a Pisces solar eclipse this year, we are actually picking up an Aries, one last Aries solar eclipse around 9 degrees of Aries on the 29th of March that's arising. So that'll take place in your second house. So in the springtime, there's likely to be some shifts and changes, again, in your finances, your income, investments, resources. There could be a new revenue stream or a reorientation, a reprioritization of your revenue streams, as well as that development of your personal values, your sense of self-worth. This could also be playing off of the fact that you have Pluto in your 12th, feeling the need to really develop this for yourself and based in yourself and not based in others. So that'll be coming up in the spring. And otherwise, the eclipse seasons are bringing up matters related to your first house with Pisces here and your 7th house with Virgo here. So the North Node tends to be areas in which we are encouraged to focus, to bring this into our life, and where we're likely to see an increase of these themes arising within our life to be dealt with and grown through. It's a point of something that we're supposed to be bringing in order to further develop and further mature. The South Node tends to be an area where we need to release something or to rely on a given area less in order to grow and mature as well. And it's kind of similar the way that this is playing out here. So we're still really oriented toward you, your perspective of yourself, your concerns, your priorities, not others. And so that's really being doubled down on around this time for you. So we're likely to see this year and then in coming years as well, following year, pretty much into 2026, we are focused on the shifts and maturation of how you see and present yourself. So this is a you orientation. And additionally, therefore, as an outgrowth of that, shifts and maturation of how you do relationships and how you perceive of relationships, what their value and purpose are to you, and a clarification to yourself of what your expectations and your boundaries are within relationships, and also not basing your self-perception on, again, what others are thinking and what you may believe that they're thinking about you. This is all about you developing a greater sense of security fully in yourself. Additionally, just generally speaking, personal development, anything that you're trying to work on, you're likely to be given clues on areas that you should be working on in terms of the events that arise in Pisces season and Virgo season, in terms of the development and maturation an evolution of your personality, your motivations, and so forth. And also a greater understanding through this whole process of your own motivations, your own values. So I think that you're really focusing this year 25 on becoming really clear about your past conditioning and how that has impacted you and your own sense of security and self-sufficiency and self-worth, and developing that power and that control over your own self, and focusing really strongly on that throughout this period of time, focusing on what you really personally truly enjoy and how it is that you want to live, the place in your life that you want for financial concerns to take on, the dimensions that you want out of that, the benefits that you are wanting to bring into your life around that. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces, for 2025. So with all of that said, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful year. And again, if you want to go into this in more detail, do feel free to book a personal reading. I would love to look into how all of these transits are playing out in your own individual chart. And again, if you don't mind hitting the thumbs up button, greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate that. And feel free to subscribe for future videos. I would love to have you here. And yeah, other than all of that, I again hope you have an absolutely beautiful year. And I will talk to you all soon. Be good. Bye.